So our small groups are planning Christmas parties, and that's at their leisure because different people have to meet at different times and places. So your small group leaders will be contacting you about Christmas parties in the month of December. Okay? All right. Now we can move on. We're going to be in Isaiah chapter 7 today. Isaiah chapter 7. What a novel idea. God with us. God with us. God with us. We talk about it, we say, yeah, I love the idea of, God being with us, but I mean really with us. I mean present. So before we can get into today, I want to just real quickly tell you that Isaiah 7, we're going to move through hopefully fairly quickly. 6 easy steps, we're going to talk through those, but before we can get into that, I got to give you some background. Before we get into the background, I want to pray right quick. Now, just 2 seconds. Father God in heaven, would you anoint this time? May it be your story. Pray to God for ears to hear and soft hearts to receive. And dear God, may we put action to this action today. May we give you glory. In Jesus' name, amen. So, I want to try to move through this fairly quickly. So, God comes to Abraham, makes covenant with him, and says, I will bless you. I will give to you land, and I will give to you legacy. He makes this covenant with him, and says, I'm going to bless you and anoint you. And you look at the sky, you see millions of stars. That's going to be what your legacy is like. Fast forward through Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Joseph, Egypt, slavery, bondage, Moses, the Exodus, parting the Red Sea and traveling into the wilderness. And God makes a covenant with Moses. And he says, if your people will trust me to be their God, I will lead them, and I will care for them, and I will protect them, and I will provide them. And they won't have anything to worry about if they will just trust me. Fast forward 40 years of walking around in circles because they didn't trust him. And they make it into the promised land, and through a series of leaders called judges, the people of Israel learn how to be a nation together. And we land in the story of Samuel. And you don't have to turn there unless you just want to. But Samuel was the judge. Samuel was the guy that was the leader for the nation of Israel during that period of time. And he was kind of God's voice to the people of Israel, God's chosen people. Samuel was the man who spoke for God, heard God's voice and presented that, and then spoke for the people on behalf to God himself. And so Samuel was that leader. And in 1 Samuel 8, something happens. Samuel's getting older, and Samuel's is appointing his 2 sons to step into his role. But they're being really kind of greedy and more self-serving. And so the people of Israel, they say to Samuel, you're getting old. That's never polite. You're getting old, and your boys aren't going to do your job the way you did it. We've been looking around, and we see what all these other nations are doing, and we have decided that we would really like that kind of government system of a king. That's what all of our neighbors have, is a king. And so that's what we want. We want a king. And this really, really upset Samuel. And so he goes to the Lord and he says, God, what do I do? And the Lord says to him, give them what they ask for. They're not rejecting you, they're rejecting me. So give them what they ask for, but remind them what the king's going to do. You see, God says to Samuel, they don't want me. This is a key phrase. Look it up. It's there. God says, they don't want me to be king. they say, give us a king. So Samuel does. He goes into the countryside, finds a man, tall, strapping, good-looking guy named Saul. Saul, I would probably say, is just an average guy. He's not a great king. He's not a bad king. He just, he does some great stuff. He does some bad stuff. And so he was here. Saul is replaced by David. David was the man after God's own heart. So he was really close up here. And God made a covenant with David that said, if you will seek me as being your boss and being your God, then you'll always have somebody of your bloodline on the throne. And so David has a son named Solomon. And Solomon sits on the throne. Solomon becomes the king. Solomon has a son named Rehoboam. And Rehoboam is not quite the same guy as Solomon. But it's out of that we have a problem with the nation of Israel. This is where you need to hear me a little closer. You see, there was a fight, there was a battle, there was a division. And so the nation of Israel divides into two. The 10 northern tribes become the nation of Israel, the kingdom of Israel. The 2 lower tribes, Judah and Benjamin, become the nation, the kingdom of Judah. Now what happens then between the tribes, the kingdom of Israel and the kingdom of Judah, is that they in turn continue to see another king, another king, another king. I promise I'm getting to my point. So you're like, I'm going to get this story over, please. So God promised David that as long as his predecessor would remain faithful to the covenant that God had given him, somebody in his bloodline would get stand on his throne. So David his lineage stayed on the throne of Judah. His son to get his son, to get his son, to get his son. Israel is a different story. Where we land in Isaiah 7 is after about 13 predecessors. And Ahaz, who was the great grandson of David, is king. And Ahaz, he's not considered a good king, he's considered an evil king. This is where we land in this story. You see, the very first verse of chapter 7, it says this: when Ahaz, son of Jotham and grandson of Uzziah, was king of Judah, King Rezin of Syria, and Pekah, son of Remaliah, the king of Israel, set out to attack Jerusalem. However, they were unable to carry out their plans. This is the first of 6 steps. This first step is certain doom. Okay? Certain doom. See, here's the story. Syria and Israel were both being threatened by the king of Assyria. He was going to come and he's going to wipe them out and take over their land. And so the king of Syria and the king of Israel decided, if we don't band together, we're going to get annihilated. And you know what let's do? Let's get the king of Judah to come on board with us. So let me do this real quick. Brandon, you come here. Chris, come here. John, can I borrow you? And I need a 4th one. I need a 4th one. Amanda. You're like, going, what? Okay. So I want you to stand there. I need you and you right here. Okay, so this is going to be the king of Assyria, okay? You're a mean guy, okay? You're a mean, vicious dude. And come on. All right. So he's a really mean king, and he's one of these 2 guys, and he's going to say to the king of Syria, I'm going to take you out. And he's going to look at this guy and say, you're the king of Israel, and I'm going to take you out. I'm going to take your land, I'm going to destroy you. And I'm going to put my own people there into that place, okay? And so you 2 guys, you turn and you look at each other and say, man, we got to do something about this, right? So we're going to band together, and we're going to make this not happen. And then you say, you know what, let's go get the king of Judah. And so you go over, you approach the king of Judah, and you say, hey, we're going to go into this fight together. Well, there's a little problem. You see, the king of Judah has already been having conversations and watching the king of Syria and saying, you know what? I see see the model of business that you do. I see the model of faith that you have. You've got some different gods and some different idols and stuff out there. And so I really like this idea. So you turn around and you look at those guys and you stick your tongue out and you say, no way. Okay? All right. So that's basically how that all boils down. Okay? All right. So go back over there. Okay? So now, what these two do is they turn around and they look at King of Judah and say, we're coming after you then because you stuck your tongue out. Okay? All right? And you say, this ain't right at all. And so what you do is you say, we're going to come beat you up. Okay? Don't really do it. Don't really do it. But that's basically what you two say. Okay? All right? All right. Hang tight. I'm moving. All right. So this is a certain doom. King Judah here is sure that the king of Israel and the king of Syria is going to take him out. Okay? They're scared to death about this part of the story. Okay? All right, so the rest of the verse 2 says, the news had come to the royal court of Judah. Syria is allied with Israel against us. That's these two guys. So the next verse, the rest of the verse, so the hearts of the kings and his people trembled with fear, like trees shaking in a storm. You tracking? Okay. All right. Okay. Step 2, you ready? Step 2, what is step 2? Trust in God, yeah. It says this, then the Lord said to Isaiah, take your son Shear-Jashub and go out to meet King Ahab. You will find him at the end of the aqueduct that feeds water into the upper pool near the road leading to the field where cloth is washed. Real quickly, I'll tell you where that's at. You see, this person is way over here in Jerusalem, but they're standing on the very edge of the city of Jerusalem. This is the very edge of Jerusalem, okay? And in standing right here, they're watching where their enemies are. And the king of Judah is saying, I see those guys, they're coming. They're going to come and get me. So this place where she's at, you're, okay. You're like scared spitless, okay? That's exactly what you think. They're over there, they're camped right inside my city. So when God says to Isaiah, go to where the king is at, that's where you're going to find him. He's on the edge of his kingdom, scared to death of what's coming. Okay? All right? Stay there. Okay. And then it says, tell him to stop worrying. Tell him he doesn't need to fear the fierce anger of those two burnt out neighbors. I love that. King Rezin of Syria and Pekah, son of Remaliah. Yes, the kings of Syria and Israel are plotting against him, saying, we will attack Judah and capture it for ourselves. Then we will install the son of Tabeel as Judah's king. But this is what the sovereign Lord says. The invasion will never happen. It will never take place. For Syria is no stronger than its capital, Damascus, and Damascus is no stronger than its king Rezin. You hear that? I'm going to you, Jack. As for Israel, within 65 years it will be crushed and completely destroyed. Sorry, man. Israel is no stronger than its capital, Samaria, and Samaria is no stronger than its king, Pekah, son of Remaliah. Now I want you to hear this next line, because this is everything that's foundational for what God's saying to Ahaz through Isaiah. You ready? Listen to these words. Unless your faith is firm, I cannot make you stand firm. Unless you trust in God, I can't help you. That's basically what it's saying. If you don't trust God in this manner, I can't help you. This is basically what's happening. God is saying to Ahaz, who has been a king who has turned his back to God. He's turned his back to God. He's worshiping false idols. He's actually looking to false gods that others are following. And he's saying, if you will just simply trust in me again, I will honor my covenant that I made with your great-great-great-grandfather David. I told him I would never, ever, ever remove the bloodline if they would just remain faithful to the covenant. You haven't been doing that, so I'm giving you another chance. Will you just trust me in this matter? If your faith is firm, I'll make you stand. All right. Give these guys a big round of applause. Thank you, guys and girls. After this happens, there's kind of a selling point that takes place. Salesmen are trained that what they do is they make the pitch on their product or service. And they make the pitch, whatever it is that they're selling. If you go to the car dealership and you say, I'm looking for a SUV. They say, okay, this is an SUV. And they go through all the features and benefits and everything else about it. And then they say this, wouldn't you like to take this home with you today? That's called asking for the sale. That's basically what that is. And that's what happens next. There's the question. So the third step is, will you trust in God? Do you trust? Do you believe what I'm saying? Here's basically what happens. Beginning in verse 10. Later the Lord sent this message to King Ahaz. Ask the Lord your God for a sign of confirmation, Ahaz. Make it as difficult as you want, as high as heaven or as deep as the place of the dead. You're basically being threatened by Syria and Israel. They're going to take you out. But I'm telling you that won't happen. And it won't happen if you'll trust in me. If you put your faith back in the Lord God Almighty, that won't happen to you. So he asks for the self. Ask me for a confirmation. Ask me to do anything. Last week we talked about how Gideon asked for confirmation by placing a big pile of lamb's wool in the middle of the winepress and said, hey, if this is really your will for me, God, would you soak this in dew, but the floor around it, would you make it dry? That was a confirmation. And that's what the Lord is saying to Ahaz. Ask me for a confirmation. Ask me for a confirmation that what I'm saying is going to be true. You can ask me anything. You can ask me anything. And I will do it just to prove to you that I mean what I say. You can trust me. The fourth one. The king refuses to trust. The king refuses to trust. The king is standing on the edge of his kingdom, looking out over the opposing enemy. And he's shaking in his boots, and he's scared to death, and he hears God saying, if you'll just trust me, I'll take care of you. You won't have to worry about anything. Those guys are just burnt out embers. They won't come. They won't attack. I'll protect you like I promised I would. I'll provide for you. And the king says in verse 12, no, I will not, that's the Lord. He says, no, I hear what you're saying, but no, I've got an ulterior motive. I've got an ulterior plan. I got this ace in the hole, this ace in the pocket, named the king of Assyria. He's going to take care of it for me. I don't need your covenant, God. I can do this myself. And Ahaz made the determined stand to refuse the covenant of God made to David. This is literally it's the finality where the covenant made with David reaches this point. And Ahaz completely, totally breaks the covenant and shuts it down. And this God of the universe who loved his chosen people, here's the king of Judah saying, no, we're done. We're done. He says, okay. And there's two things I want to tell you. And the first one is going to be number 5. I'm coming down there. I'm coming coming down there. And this is what it says. I want you to hear this. Family of David. Hear that? He refers to the covenant made to David in that statement. Isn't it enough to exhaust human patience? Must you exhaust the patience of my God as well? All right then, the Lord himself will give you the sign. Look, the virgin will conceive a child. She will give birth to a son and will call him Emmanuel, which means God with us. By the time this child is old enough to choose what is right and reject what is wrong, he will be eating yogurt and honey. For before the child is that old, the lands of the two kings you fear so much will both be deserted. I'm coming down there. I am physically coming down there. Number 6. You're going in time. Now, as parents, I don't know if you've ever put your children in time out or not, but the whole point behind putting your children in time out is a disciplinary issue, and whenever I got put in time out, let me just put that. Whenever I got put in time out, it was to make me stand in one spot, couldn't do nothing, couldn't touch nothing. If my mom told me to put my nose in the corner, I put my nose in the corner. I couldn't move, right? And and you know what my mom always said to me when she did that? Now you think about what she did. This is exactly what the Lord does with the tribe of Judah. Listen to what it says. Then the Lord will bring things on you, your nation, and your family, unlike anything since Israel broke away from Judah. He will bring the king of Assyria upon you. In that day the Lord will whistle for the army of southern Egypt and for the army of Assyria. They will swarm around you like flies and bees. They will come in vast hordes and settle in the fertile areas and also in the desolate valleys, caves, and thorny places. In that day the Lord will hire a razor from beyond the Euphrates River, the king of Assyria, and use it to shave off everything, your land, your crops, and your people. In that day, a farmer will be fortunate to have a cow and 2 sheep or goats left. Nevertheless, there will be enough milk for everyone because so few people will be left in the land. They will eat their fill of yogurt and honey. In that day, the lush vineyards, now worth 1,000 pieces of silver, basically means they're not worth anything at all, will become patches of briars and thorns. The entire land will become a vast expanse of briars and thorns, a hunting ground overrun by wildlife. No one will go to the fertile hillsides where the gardens once grew, for briars and thorns will cover them. Cattle, sheep, and goats will graze there. And that's what happens. This is about 732, 735 BC, and within a little over 100 years, it's the king of Babylon, which is kind of a brother nation, sister nation to Assyria, begins to come in to Jerusalem and take the rich, the wise, the royal, the leaders, the officers, begins to remove the people of Jerusalem and take them where? Into bondage, into exile, into Babylon. And they were in time out. And you think about what you did. There's a number of takeaways from this story for us. I think first off, one of the things that strikes me about the story in Isaiah is how faithful God is to his word. He makes the promise to David that says, if you will simply make sure that your bloodline stays in covenant with me, you'll never, ever lose the throne out of your bloodline. And it was to the very end. I mean, it was literally Ahaz making the determined step of saying, no, I will not. But that God would be so faithful. If you would simply Trust in me again, Ahaz. I will bless your kingdom. If you'll trust me again, I will bless your kingdom, and I will protect you from these guys. I will provide for you. If you will trust in me, if you'll trust in me. Another takeaway that I have is this. Ahaz stands on the edge of his kingdom, watching the enemies coming. How many times is that us? We're standing on the edge of our kingdom, and we see the enemy approaching, and we're just scared to death. Maybe the enemy is finances. God, I have more months and not enough money. God, I have a big expense that's coming. I'm standing on the edge of my kingdom and at fear of losing my kingdom because I don't have enough money to take care of what's ahead of me. Maybe the enemy is fear. And you stand on the edge of your kingdom afraid of what that is. Maybe the enemy is relationship quarrel. And we stand on the edge of our kingdom and we say, scared to death. I'm freaking out here because I see what's coming. And I think of the number of people that I've had conversations with that they know the promises of God. They hear the promises of God. And the promises like, don't worry about anything, but in faith, through prayer, make your requests known to God, and He will supply all your needs according to His will. Matthew 6, don't worry about what you eat, what you drink, what you wear, because the Lord who made you knows what you need. And we stand on the edge of our kingdom watching things come that are going to attack us, and we know what the Word, we know if we'll just trust in God, He'll take care of it, but we always come up with a contingency plan to trust something else. I've got a plan. If I just sell this, or if I start buying into this other program over here, if I start to hang out with these different people over here, I got this. I can handle this. I don't need to trust in God. I can just trust myself and do what He says I can do, and I got this. And I think probably one of the biggest ones for me has to do with this story. Is that when Ahaz turns his back completely against God, and he says, no, I will not trust you, God. God doesn't just stop. The Lord stays in control. He says, okay, I'm going to put you in timeout. Why do we put our kids in timeout? Because we want them to learn something new. Because why? Because we love our kids. Not because we want to just be mean to our kids, right? We want our kids to learn from that pattern, from that thing. We want you to learn from this. This is the same story. God put Israel into timeout in Babylon because why? Because He loved them and He wanted them to sit still long enough to hear what the answer was. Jonah was in timeout for 3 days. The belly of the poor guy. Smelled like fish food. And the God of the universe, when Ahaz turned his back, he says, no, I'm done. God says, I'm not. God says, I'm not. And I'm going to come stand in the middle of your stuff so that you cannot escape me. God with us. "700 years later, we would celebrate the birth of Christ. Why? Well, it's the fulfillment of prophecy, yes. But when man turned his back completely against God, God said, I'm not done. And he comes into this earth chasing after us. I hope you get that picture. That the God of the universe comes into this world wearing flesh and bone to chase after. Why? Because he wants to beat us out? Because he loves you. Because he wants you to enjoy intimacy with him. And the promises are still there if you trust in God. If you trust in God, he will protect you. He will provide for you. He will carry you. He will strengthen you. Does it mean the life goes perfectly hunky-dory? I wish. But does it mean God goes with you when you're in the dark spots? Absolutely. I loved hearing what Vicki had to say. The dark spots in her story, man. God was walking with her all the way through that story. I want that kind of a God. Such a novel idea that as we enter into Advent, this idea of Emmanuel, God with us. Because why? Because he's chasing after those that are standing on the edge of their kingdom. Saying, no, let's be talking. I'm so grateful for that, God. Worship team, would you come up? Prepare. There's a song that we're going to sing. It's called Reckless Love. And it's really interesting because I picked the song earlier in the week thinking, hey, this would be a great, cool song to do at the end. And it is a great, cool song to do at the end. But as we were practicing through it this morning, I began to think of Ahab standing there on the edge of his territory watching the enemies. And I remember thinking how the God of the universe sent Isaiah to him to say, don't worry, just trust in me. And I thought about this pursuing nature of God through personhood of Jesus. So I'd like to just invite you to sing it with us. That's it. And this is the God that is chasing after you too. Let's pray. Father God, I pray this morning that we press into this idea that the God of the universe loves us so much that even when we turn our back, you're still chasing after us. You're still standing in the middle of our stuff. Father God, I pray that we would invite you into our story. That we want to sit in the presence of you. And dear Father, I pray that we would trust you with all that we are. Thank you for your faithfulness. Thank you for your promises.